Hello, and welcome to Dr. Bill Speak. Today we will be continuing our spiritual journey with part 5 of 4. But anyway, we will continue from where we left off last week. And the last video we talked about love. We introduced the concept of love. And we say that God is love. We define love as that attitude, the unconditional attitude for the well-being of self and others. We also say that what love is not. Love is not a feeling. It's nothing, we have that feeling when we're young, and not just when we're young, at different points in our lives, for different people in our lives. And we call that feeling love. Now, if love, God's love, is an unconditional attitude, not a feeling, then when we have that feeling, strong feeling for a special person or in a special relationship, that's a condition. It's not God's love. It's a conditional understanding that create a chemistry between people that may have been based on past lives or whatever you may believe. And the same way when we choose our friends, when we're born into a family, we have those bondings, and we're drawn to, and we're repelled from people, but all based on certain conditions that we harbor either consciously or unconsciously. But when we're talking about God's love, the way that God loved each and every living thing, then we're talking about an attitude of unconditional, no conditions whatsoever, concern for the well-being of ourselves and others. Now, as we have talked, and I have referred people often to the belief system, parts 1 through 5. Parts 1 through 5 is essential in understanding our departure from where we are to where we want to be. Because believe it or not, innately, we all want to have a relationship with God. We may think that we don't deserve it or whatever based on how we have consumed our belief system. See, our belief system, which is our ego-based system, don't believe in eternity. It only believes in time and space. It believes that in time, which is from birth to death. But we know that there is life beyond that. That was the purpose of the resurrection, to teach us that. So today we want to talk more about love. And like I mentioned last week, love begins with self, and then it extends to neighbor. And as we extend it to neighbor, we encompasses the love of God through our love of neighbor. And we'll talk more about all of that later on, but what I want to talk about for the next few weeks is why it is so difficult to come to love self. I'm not talking about rewarding self for being good or liking self because we may have achieved a goal. I'm not even talking about setting goals or not setting goals. What I'm talking about is that innate love that we were created to have. You see, we talked about the separation when we decided we wanted to take our inheritance and go on that trip, But we're still on that trip. So far it's been a 16 billion year trip, but we're still on it. And as we stay on this trip, more and more, we're either caught up in our belief system, which is keeping us from God, and there's some of us who are moving toward God. If you're trying to do it through religion, you're still in the belief system and you're moving away from God. You see, one of the things that our belief system teaches us that keep us from drawing near to God is the idea of sin. Where did this idea come from? Where did the idea come from that of sin? Well, we have translated the term makaria, which is a Greek term, which means missing the mark. Missing the mark is an archery term, and it's like if you shoot an arrow at a bullseye, and instead of hitting the bullseye, you hit the spaces around the bullseye. Or throwing a dot. If you're throwing a dot in a club, and very few people can get it dead in the middle, because that's the mark. So if you don't get it dead in the middle, then you missed the mark. No big deal. Missing the mark means that you haven't done anything horrible. You've made a mistake, and the mistake can be corrected. You get another arrow and shoot again. In life, our belief system has made us believe that missing the mark is devastating, and missing the mark would cause us to go to hell. They forget to tell us that we are living in hell. This is the hell. Look around at the wars, the homelessness, the hunger, people who don't have food, don't have medical care. Look around at people who take weapons of war into schools and kill babies. This is hell. And we all want to get out of this and move towards where God is calling us to be. God calls us through many prophets. Jesus was one, Buddha was one, and there are many others. I don't want to get into a discussion about all that. But He called all of us back home. And they're standing there waiting for us to turn around. But it's up to us to make the decision to turn around. Now, to do that, to start to learn to love self, I should say, the first thing that we have to overcome is the consequences of believing in sin. Now, the consequences of believing in sin is guilt. We cannot love ourselves as long as we are feeling guilt and shame. Like guilt is part of the belief system, not part of God. See, God don't have guilt. God's system is based on love. You see, we live either under the laws of the belief system or we live under the laws of God. And the law of God was explained to us very well by many prophets, and Jesus was one of them, when He said that the commandments are to love God and to love neighbor as your loving self. But He also said upon these two laws, hang all the laws and the prophets. So if we learn to love, which is the most powerful force in the universe, if we learn to love one another, universally, do you realize how many wars would have to be fought? How many abuses won't take place? How many homeless people wouldn't exist? So and when we look around at the world, there is nobody or nothing moving toward united and bringing together everyone under the umbrella of love. So that is what we have to do. And the first thing we have to do is stop beating up on ourselves with guilt. So you've done some things in life and you've made mistakes. So what? We all have. That's why we're all here. And once we've come through a life so many times that we've learned, I'm gonna say we won't come no more. But we all have. But what we all must learn to do is to forgive first ourselves. We have to learn to say that God did not create guilt. When God created us as He was, God created us in His image. And God is not guilty. God is guiltless. God is guiltless. And I want to let everybody know that each and every one of us is guiltless. We may have made mistakes, but the mistakes do not cause for punishment or condemnation. It calls for turning it loose, letting it go. Understanding, this is why we have to be rigorously honest with ourselves. We have to be willing to look at ourselves and say, well, I made this mistake. I was looking at it wrong. I didn't see this person or this thing as part of God. And I acted foolishly, but I won't do that no more. I will turn around. I won't attack people anymore. People that disagree with me, people that don't look like me, for all kind of reasons. We attack. And the other thing we do is defend. Attacking or defending. Neither one is part of God's understanding of love, of what God's love is teaching us. See, God's love teaches us that no matter how far away from God we've gone, we are one of God's children. And God loves all of his children. Now you'll hear me use Hughes and brothers, and I hope that you don't become offended with that. Because when you're talking about souls, there is no gender. There is no male and female souls. God created us in his image. We're both male and female. Okay? See, so I say brothers, but if you choose to say sisters, or if you choose to say neighbor, that's okay. As long as we understand that at 1 minute, it's the process of all of us becoming one with one another. And the only way to do that is through love. And it all begins with loving self. Now, there are many reasons why we don't love self. Guilt is one of them. But until I make the next video, I want you to spend some time each day looking at things that you think that have caused you to be shameful or feel guilty, even if they're conscious or subconscious. Go way back, because they started teaching us this and programming us that we deserve punishment, many years ago. So look at ourselves, and each time that you sit down to pray and meditate, which we should do every day, just say, I am guiltless. I am a child of God, and I am guiltless. Let's see if we can get this right. I am a child of God. I am guiltless. You see, we may have made mistakes, but we're not guilty. You see, that's a term created by the ego, not by God. God is saying, come into me and I will give you rest. I forgive, as you forgive sins, I'm forgiving you. As a matter of fact, forgiveness is the process of forgiving both the person who have harmed us or we have harmed and ourselves. So this is why we'll talk about that later. But let's get rid of the guilt and begin to love ourselves so that we won't be so depressed sometimes and we won't feel so out of sorts sometimes. Because God is love. And because we are made in God's image, each of us is also love. We just have to get inside ourselves and pull that love out. So after this video, every time you meet someone that you have talked about in the past, or anything that you have done, just think, this is someone I love. I love this person. Send them some love. Someone who may have harmed you, send them love in your mind. You tell your mind that I love that person. I want that person to know that I love them. And just do this over and over and over. Because spirituality is not a set of rules and principles. That's religion. Spirituality is a practice. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you the next time. Dr. Bill is tuning out.